I'm Courtney Kaysen.
I'm Elise Ivy.
And we're two beauty besties
talking all things beauty.
Welcome into Basic B.
Okay, so here, sorry. I just really appreciated that. Like, you were like real into the bee.
Yeah, it is our first ever podcast. Someone's got to be into the bee, and luckily it's beauty.
Luckily it is beauty, right? So here's the deal. What I love so much about beauty is that it's ever changing, right?
Yes.
So a lot of times you'll have like this awesome beauty day where you're like, my makeup's on point, my hair is on point. And then there's other days where you're like, wow, girl, okay, what just happened? Beauty blunder after beauty blunder.
Sure.
Kind of wondering how your week's been.
Well, I got to be honest with you. It feels like soup outside, so not great. You know, this is one of the things like coming up in just a few weeks. I'm celebrating a 4-year wedding anniversary, and with 1,000% humidity, it's like I look at photos of myself right now and I'm like, who did my husband marry? I am unrecognizable. My hair is like the cowardly lion.
I gotta be honest with you, I am in the same struggle situation right now. I am on the hair struggle bus, and my hair is so big. And recently I cut like 5-6 inches off my hair, so it's kind of in this shorter lob situation right now. And my biggest fear is that I'm gonna have like the same frizz and quote bob that I had in high school just because it's so big right now.
Absolutely. Like, I think if you saw my hair yesterday and you were only like just looking at my hair, you would have assumed two things. I'm 13 and for sure have braces.
Got it. Well, what's funny is I probably actually was wearing a retainer.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I was on the way in today. Here's the deal. I'm wondering also about your hair with product. For me personally, when I put too much product in my hair, because I have a lot of fine hair, it tends to get worse almost with this humidity.
Well, one of the things that I've been toying with, especially with this weather situation that we have, is I've been drying my hair and I've been going product free while it's wet, because I'm like, that's not helping me so far, you know, with that. And what I've been doing actually is been using my products on the opposite. So I'll put them on dry hair as opposed to wet hair, even though it may not say. So I have been using Hot Tresses styling cream on dry hair rather than wet hair. That's helped. But I've also started using texturizing spray, but I'm not using it just at my roots. I am shellacking it on every end. So it's making my hair a little bit thicker, but it's not as reactive to the humidity.
Okay, so you're going totally beauty rogue.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to. It's not working coloring in the lines.
All right. Well, thank goodness our next guest coming up is a hair expert. I'm sure that she can give us some tips and tricks to deal with this humidity.
So we're going to be talking to Alli Webb. She's the founder of Drybar, what started off as a small business in Southern California by mobile, if you will. She has grown into a 100-location business where she performs thousands of blowouts every single year for amazing clientele. And it's just been so nice to be able to catch her as it's bigger than ever and spend a few minutes with her.
All right, guys. Well, here we are with Alli Webb, the founder of Drybar. So, Alli, what have you been up to?
I did a bunch of podcasts today, so
Oh, yay! Okay,
Yeah.
gosh, I hope we don't ask you like 18 of the same questions.
There's only a certain scope of questions people ask me, anyways.
Yeah.
So, although I did just judge Miss America.
Wait, tell us about that.
So last weekend, which I don't know when this is going to air, but I was one of the judges for Miss America, which was quite an interesting experience. And I was just mentioning that to you guys because I was on Cheddar TV today when I was in the city, and they asked me about, why I decided to do that. And that is not usually one of the questions I get asked. Most of it is like entrepreneurship and, hair questions and building Drybar and all of that. So that I was like, oh, a new question. This is so exciting. But, they were asking me about why I decided to get involved, which I'm happy to tell you if you are interested in knowing.
We are interested in knowing.
So I was approached about doing it, and if I'm being totally honest, my first reaction to it was like, ooh, even though I watched Miss America as a kid and all those pageant-y shows, I think as a strong female entrepreneur, I was like, I don't know. I feel like it might be a little degrading to women. But as you probably have heard, they really changed it up this year, and it was like Miss America 2.0. And it really was. And there's no swimsuit competition. It was so much less based on what the girls look like. I mean, honestly, if anything, I mean, the girls were all beautiful. I mean, they're beautiful girls and all different sizes and all different colors. And, you know, I couldn't have been more impressed with how incredibly smart these girls were. They all had like fancy degrees, much fancier. I don't even have a degree. I mean, they were like on the ball, smart girls.
So did you feel like, as somebody who's created these wonderful menus of iconic styles at Drybar, did you feel like when they started talking that you could see a bit of who their personality was based on how they wore their hair for the pageant?
That's so funny. I don't really think I thought of it in terms of that, but hair was definitely on point. I mean, for sure.
So hairography on a scale of 1 to 10, what was it?
It was good. I mean, the hair was really strong. I would say it was like somewhere between an 8 and a 9.
Yes.
But you know, the clothes were very like up to date and on trend too, which they, you know, Miss America, like as an organization, doesn't like using the word pageant. So it definitely did not have that like pageant-y weird feel. It had this like, you know, what I learned about it is like this truly is a platform for girls who live, you know, all over the country who don't really have a way to like get their mission and what they're trying to do in the world out there. And this is such a great platform for them. So I was really stoked to be a part of it.
That's amazing. Speaking of missions, I do want to ask you a few questions about Drybar,
Yes,
of course.
of course.
I want to know, you know, your career path, because as, you know, I did a little reading, and what I noticed is that you didn't necessarily go to hair school right off the bat. It took you a minute. Can you take us through that journey?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a 4-hour story, but I'll condense it. I mean, basically, I grew up in South Florida, where, you know, being here on the East Coast, you know what humidity is all about. And for me, having curly, frizzy hair as a kid was like, why do I do with this? You know, it was just like big, curly, frizzy hair, and I couldn't do anything with it, and I couldn't stand it. And make my mom take me to like her cut and color stylist, and they would blow it out. And I got a job in a hair salon working as a receptionist when I was in high school, which they would blow my hair out. So I always really paid close attention, but I could never totally figure it out. And after high school, when my friends were all like going to college and knew what they wanted to major in, and I also, again, like, how do you know what you want to be? Like, we're so young, and they all had like pretty defined things they wanted to do, and I certainly didn't. And so but I did go to traditional college for like a minute and realized this was not the place for me. And then I moved to New York City and thought I wanted to work in fashion. And I was like all of 19 and was living like by myself. I didn't know anybody, but it was a great like experience and rite of passage. And then I ended up working for Nicole Miller with my brother, Michael Landa, who's my business partner in Drybar. And we ended up moving back to South Florida, opening a couple Nicole Miller boutiques. But we have always been very, very close. But that relationship, that joint business was very hard on our relationship, and we were fighting all the time, and it just like wasn't what we wanted to be doing.
And do you feel like it was hard because here you are, a woman working in a women's fashion high-end retailer, and did he understand the ins and outs? Did he know your customer?
Yeah, he did. And our parents had, you know, their own clothing store growing up, so we knew fashion and retail. That's kind of why it seemed like a very natural fit for both of us. And, you know, he was kind of the back end of things, and I was on, you know, running the store, and I was hiring the people who worked in the store and all of that, and we were doing the buying together. But it just like wasn't the thing I wanted to do. And I was in my early 20s. I mean, I probably was all of like 21 at this point. And I, you know, kind of looked around one day and was like, this cannot be it. Like, this is not my thing. This is not my passion. And I remember going to my brother, I kind of like working up the courage to go to my brother and say, you know what, I'm not really happy. We're fighting. This isn't what I want to do with my life. I think I actually want to go to cosmetology school. You know, so this is like, like 3-4-ish years out of high school, like kind of roaming around, not knowing what I really wanted to do. So he actually was very, very supportive of my decision to go to cosmetology school, whereas my parents were a little less supportive of that decision. But I really felt, and of course I didn't have like the vision for Drybar back then. It would be a great story, but I didn't. I loved hair, and I just wanted to be in that world. And I started working, I went to cosmetology school, and I also was like part-time working at a hair salon for an owner of a hair salon, John Peters in Boca, and he kind of taught me everything he knows. And what's funny, and it's funny how I talk a lot about how your your path, it's important to stay on the path of like, just keep doing the things that make you happy and you like. And John Peters was my mentor and he owned the salon, and I was just trying to learn how to do hair from him. But because he was the owner, he was also running his salon. And so I, inadvertently picked up all the things that he was, everything that he was doing to run this salon. So, which ended up obviously serving me later in the long run with Drybar, which is why it's like, you have to pay attention to all the different things that you do in your life, because they all matter and they all really help and build, who you are as a person.
Before you started Drybar and you had your babies, you have two amazing little boys.
Yes. They're not so little anymore. They're 11 and 13.
Almost old enough to vote.
I mean, my older son is taller than me. He picks me up when he hugs me now. It's the trippiest thing.
Oh my gosh.
It's so weird.
Well, what was like, especially having now all of your training, through your apprenticeship with John Peters and whatnot.
Yeah.
When you had two little ones, did you find it impossible to have a good hair day? I mean, to allot that time because little people needed you?
Yeah, totally. I mean, after I'd spent years in the hair industry. I moved back to New York. I was working for a great salon in New York, and then I met my husband there and we moved to LA and had kids. And, when I was a stay-at-home mom, and I really I don't think I was even thinking about my hair then. I was so immersed in this like mommy community in LA, and I was like, couldn't have been happier to be able to stay home and not work and just be with my first son and then my second son. But it was really after my second son was born, and I don't know if you guys have kids, but when it gets a lot harder going from 1 to 2. And once the little ones started crawling and they were going separate directions in the park, that's like when I'm like, I'm out of here. I need help. And that's kind of when I really decided to start my mobile business, which eventually turned into Drybar. But I was just very like Lululemon pants and ponytails for years when I was a stay-at-home mom, and it wasn't until I kind of got that itch to get out there and do something for myself again that I started Straight at Home, which was my mobile business. And that is when I kind of realized, it's kind of when the light bulb went off for me, that like, man, like there's nowhere for women to go for just blowouts. And that was all I was offering. It was like a $40 blowout because $40 felt easy for a woman to give me 220s. And like, that was the big grand plan. And I got very busy very quickly in that time and realized like, man, there is a massive hole in the marketplace for someplace that just focuses on blowouts, for curly frizzy hair girls like me, which of course it turns out that girls with straight flat hair want big voluptuous hair. So we all want what we can't have.
Yes, equal opportunity on the blowout for sure. We all want it. Now, is that when you decided, okay, I'm going to reach back out to my brother and see if he will get in on this with me, or how did that transpire?
So I was operating this mobile business and I was just getting so busy so fast. Like I couldn't believe how so many women were calling me, and I kind of came to a crossroads where I was like, do I bring on more stylists and try to, expand this mobily, or do I go and try to bring it to a brick and mortar? And that is when I went to my brother and my husband, who are both bald, by the way, and had no business being in a hair industry.
Wow,
but
that's amazing.
My brother was like, I think it's a great idea. They knew I was both knew I was having so much success in my mobile business and thought like, for sure this will work in LA. And at least with like the clientele that I had, built up in LA, we thought, yeah, maybe this would work. And so my brother had his good friend, Josh Heitler, who's an amazing award-winning Harvard graduate architect, who was like kind of luckily in between projects. And my brother called him and was like, hey, my little sister has this idea for a salon. Would you help us build it? And as you guys know from going in Drybar, it's set up like a bar. The mirrors are behind the stations. You're watching a chick flick. It's not like a traditional salon. And, that just came from me working in traditional salons most of my life and feeling like this is just not exactly what I want it to be. It's just a blowout. You don't need the mirror for like precision for hair cutting. And I was like, let's just try it this way. And then, I got my brother to agree. I mean, he like took a minute to convince, and he was like, why do women need somebody else to blow out their hair? I was like, oh God. I was like, don't you remember growing up with me and my curly frizzy hair? And he was like, not really. I was like, really? But like, as kids, very self-involved. But I explained to him that most women, can't do their own hair super well. And his wife happens to have like stick straight hair. So he was like, Sarah doesn't need help. I'm like, she's like the 1%. Her hair just grows straight out of her head. She's very lucky. But most women don't have that.
So you're set up right now, starting a beauty venture with two dudes that don't have hair.
Two bald dudes.
Two bald dudes. And a lot of opinions already. Like when it came to even this idea of like full on entrepreneurship where you're having to discuss things like how are we going to raise capital? Where are we going to get money from?
Yeah.
Do you feel like because you are of this fabulous creative mindset that it was easier for you to start the conversation about how to raise money, whereas somebody who might have been in finance or business might have been like, no, we need to make a formal business plan and things like that?
No, I had no idea how to raise money. I mean, I had no idea how to do most things when it came to business. I knew how to do hair, and I knew from the story I told you, I kind of knew how to run a salon. I knew how to hire stylists, kind of, I mean, but my point of view was very much in the hair industry, and I knew I could handle that part, and I'd learn what I didn't know. What I didn't know, which, Michael knew to a certain extent, but like, no, I didn't know about like how and where and when and why we raise money. I mean, when we were so busy in Brentwood in that first store, and Michael at the time was running another company. It was like a real estate marketing company. And I was like, because we didn't know what was going to happen with Drybar. Like nobody was quitting their day jobs except for me. Cameron was at his advertising agency and Michael was at his job. And after we opened the first store and realized we were kind of onto something, I was like, Mike, you got to quit your job and find us more stores, because he's good at the real estate part of things, which again, I wasn't, and negotiating lease terms and figuring all that, which is like, not fun at all, but he kind of likes that stuff, and he's like a wheeler and dealer, so he was doing that. And in the meantime, Cameron was up before we launched, but all the while developing the brand and the brand aesthetic and what the website looked like and all of that. So it was so much I've learned so much on the job, but I didn't know anything about raising money. I mean, now I do, and even in the early days when we were figuring out how to grow quickly, because we couldn't grow organically. The business wasn't throwing off enough money to do that, but we were like, well, what do we do? And so Michael wanted to start franchising, and so we did that a little bit, but that was all, that business end stuff was really all Michael in the beginning. And then I very quickly got an education on it, and I could tell you a lot about raising money now, but back then it was very like, Michael had to call and talk to a lot of people and network and like get different points of view of what and how we should raise money. So it's been very much an education. I feel like I've gotten an MBA in education in running Drybar the last 9 years.
So you speak of, a lot of people that are on your team that have given you a lot of support along the way. And for somebody that maybe is just starting off their beauty business, or any business for that matter, how important is it to find those key people that are going to be on your team? Or should you try to take it all on at first and reduce cost? What do you recommend?
I think it's a personal decision, but for me, I think I feel very strongly that the fact that there was the three of us with very different skill sets. I mean, obviously Michael was the business, Cameron was the branding, and I was the hair. The fact that we had those three things that were very important pieces of the business, I very strongly believe that that's why we had immediate success. And I think that it's hard. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of, to your point, take it all on themselves. And aside from like the support that you need and the bouncing off and all of that, it's hard. Just nobody is great at everything, and again, if we had not had Michael and it was just Cam and I think there'd be like maybe 4 Drybars now. It was like we needed Michael to help us like figure out how to navigate into getting more stores. And if it wasn't for Cameron, there would also be a lot less stores because the branding wouldn't have been as strong, and we couldn't have hired someone of Cameron's caliber. I mean, we weren't really paying ourselves for a very long time. So to answer your question, I think I feel very strongly that you do need those people who, kind of can fill in the gaps where you as an entrepreneur may need help. And I think that's a hard thing to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm not good at this, so I'm going to bring in this person. And you're right, a lot of entrepreneurs don't want to including me, didn't want to give up equity because a lot of times you don't have any money to pay people. So you offer them equity as a way. So I didn't want to do that. And I had a lot of conversations with my brother about, owning a small piece of a big pie versus the other way around, which, is a hard pill to swallow. But if you want to grow it, and that was our mentality, if we want to grow this thing and we want to grow Drybar, we need people who can do the things that we just don't know how to do, and the things we just don't know we don't know.
Well, 10 years later, you have more than 100 locations across the nation. And so I have to ask this personal question, because you had this idea, you're a stay-at-home mommy, you just wanted to get out and work a little bit.
Right.
What was harder for you in retrospect? Starting this business and then, interviewing somebody to maybe take care of your kids, when you're working, or hiring somebody to take care of your business?
It was all hard, and there's guilt on all sides, honestly. And I was lucky when my kids were young. I had my mom around to really help with the kids. So that did take a huge burden off of me, knowing that they were with my mom, which was really like a second mother to them. And as they got older, and we did, my kids have always had nannies around, and that's, I'm sure some people don't agree with that, and there's maybe some judgment around that. But for me, I always felt like it was more important for mommy to be happy and do what was fulfilling to me, and that my kids would understand it. And they have. I mean, they've grown up with this very strong sense of this work ethic. The same thing I had, because my parents were entrepreneurs. They worked a ton, and they had that too. So I think it's hard on both sides, but I think that's how I kind of dealt with the kid side of it. And it was, as we started to bring in more professional execs, it definitely got hard. Our first hire was a president of retail, and we needed her to help us figure out how to put systems in place and make sure everybody got paid and make sure the stores had what they need. And, the things that we were able to do when there was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost 10 stores. But once we got past 10, it was man, this is this is becoming out of our reach. And so, we hired a president, and she was really great. And then we eventually brought in private equity, and they were really great. And they had said to us, you're going to need a professional CEO. And I was like, no, we don't. We got this. But they were right. And it did end up being one of the best decisions we did, because at that point, the company was more at 30 or 40 stores. And it was just massive. It felt so massive, that we needed someone who was a good manager and someone who knew how to, again, take this to the next level and bring in the right people. And so it's been quite the journey.
So now, with over 100 locations and 1.2 million blowouts a year, I'm sure you're getting amazing customer stories. Do you have one in particular that has touched you the most?
We honestly have a lot of those, and I feel just so many just came flooding to my head. But I'll tell you, we've had, we've always really empowered our stylists and our bartenders, the people who are running the show in our shops, to we one of our core values is random acts of kindness. And so I can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails or I've heard from the stores that a woman came in and she was going to a funeral that day, and it was just, her mother died, and something really heart-wrenching, and was so sad, and couldn't get out of the house. And she came into Drybar, and, they kind of knew that, and everybody treated her really well, and they took care of her blowout for her. And it just gave her a little lift, So we have stories like that and things that happen all the time. There's a girl actually who lives here in New York who had a voluntary double mastectomy because she was positive for the BRCA gene. And so she had surgery, and she had been a longtime customer, and she couldn't do her own hair for a while and was coming into Drybar and emailed me about how sweet everybody was and how well they took care of her. And she, and it's there's hundreds, truly, maybe even thousands of stories like that come in all the time, or we've gotten voicemails from clients who are telling us the staff was so kind and it just really made their day. And I think, customer service is I believe one of the pillars of our success. And I think that a lot of businesses take it for granted, and it's something so important to us. And my parents had their own business, and we saw how they treated their customers. And that's something that we really pride ourselves on. And it's amazing how, when you treat people really well, how touching and, moving it is. And you're, as most businesses don't, you feel very wow, these people seem to really care about me. So there is a lot of that happens.
Earlier in our beauty banter segment, we had some epic fails for the week. And for Elise and I, it has been our hair. It is soup outside. I'm sure you know that, coming from California. And I want to ask you, like, if we were to walk into Drybar right now and you needed to prescribe us product for frizzy hair.
Oh, man.
What's on the table?
Right. Well, because here it's much less frizzy hair in California than it is out here in the humidity. But I always tell people to go with the humidity. If you have like hair that tends to get frizzy and you're in a humid environment, like don't try to wear your hair stick straight like a Manhattan. Wear it with like curl and volume. So, and beach, like the messier, the better, you know? So investing in like a 3-day bender so you can just curl kind of over the frizz, and like our Mai Tai spritzer or chaser, like the Mai Tai spritzer is a sea salt spray, so you can just spray it in and like twist some pieces, and it's like the messier the better, you know. And then of course having dry shampoo, because you do tend to like get your hair gets sweaty, and if you have dry shampoo it helps like make it look nice and fresh.
So with the 12 to 15 styles that you have on the menu,
Do we have that many?
I feel like I have the book, and I feel like there's
we have
12.
like, well, there's braids now, and there's the Uptini, so there's a bunch.
So if you get a chance, like check it out. It's a fabulous menu of different ways to wear your hair. But I'm going to give you a deserted island question. If you are going to the island and you can only pick one style to wear for the rest of your life, what's it going to be?
Oh, it's definitely a Mai Tai.
Definitely Mai Tai.
Hands down.
And what's a Mai Tai?
Kind of like my hair is now. It's like messy, beachy waves. Like I'm all about messy, beachy hair. I like the messier and more undone, the better.
Side note, when I used to live in LA, I was a Drybar frequenter, and I would always order the Mai Tai.
It's a really popular style because it's like that, like you don't really look like you did like your hair, and it's like effortlessly chic, and you look done but not overly done. That's what I love about it too.
Well, your hair looks amazing today, even
Thank
in
you.
this humidity.
I know, but see, I went with it. I was like, well, I'm not
with
going to make it straight because that's not going to do me any favors.
Yeah, it looks awesome. Well, we're so
Thank you.
appreciative of
Thanks
your
for having
time
me.
and hanging out with us here on the podcast.
It's so fun.
You're our first guest.
I'm the first?
You're the first.
So exciting. I hope I did okay.
You did fabulous.
Well, be sure to check out Ali Webb on Instagram. Lots of great tutorials that she posts courtesy with her hubby and, of course, her brother, and great ways to learn how to achieve your Drybar styles at home. Thanks, Ali.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Well, that was so much fun with Ali.
I officially have an eternal Women Crush Wednesday vibe on her.
I'm right there with you. I mean, she's a basic bee, right?
She's a basic bee.
She's a basic bee. She's one of us.
She gets it. Well, now it's time to go into a segment that's called Don't Make Me Ask You Twice.
I love it.
As beauty hosts, you and I, we get a lot of questions with what we wear on air, what are beauty trends, and so you've got some questions from our fellow listeners that we are going to answer now.
Absolutely. Okay, so I solicited for some questions, and all I did was say, I need your help. We're working on a top secret project, which is this one right here. And I basically wanted any beauty question our viewers and our listeners have ever had. Okay, so I got some great ones. And Dee Dee, this is the cutest question ever. What the heck is baking for makeup? Or do you just eat a cupcake when you're applying your makeup? That is my favorite question.
I find this topic so frustrating because I don't know if I'm for it 1,000% or if I hate it the most out of anything that's become trendy in the world of beauty. So I've actually done baking, and this whole idea is, especially if you have crepiness, you have uneven texture around your eyes, it's like, how can I cake on product, let it sit there for 10 minutes, and then dust it off so that everything is this like smooth, lovely layer? As someone who is a professed user of self-tanner more than any other beauty product in life, I haven't found the right balance. I mean, there are so many makeup artists that'll tell you translucent powder is the devil. So trying to find that balance to where it looks like a natural blend so that it doesn't look cakey, I don't know that I can support it. I mean, if you have a different opinion, let me know, but it's unsustainable. I don't have 10 minutes to devote just to my under eyes.
That is so funny. Well, I have to agree with you that I have baked a couple of times. I find that's kind of funny because that's actually the literal sense in the kitchen and also on my face. But I also don't find it to be something that I'm ever going to do on the daily, right? Like that is something when you are committing to like going out in Vegas with your beauty besties and you're like, I am going to have the brightest under eyes that were ever existed, right? Yes. So that's the only time that I would probably commit to baking. But even then, I also have had a really hard time finding the right powder. Absolutely. I'm also not a huge fan of powder in general because I don't like the clogged pore situation.
So, Dee Dee, we don't know how to answer your question other than maybe try it once a week, but unless you're looking to live your best mannequin life, we can't support it on the daily. Next question.
I sort of want to live my best mannequin life. That sounds pretty amazing. All right, so Patty, she says, okay, I'm a makeup holic. My question is eyeshadow first or eyeliner? She said, I think it's like, who was here first, the chicken or the egg? LOL.
That's amazing. All right. Do you want me to answer
Go
this
for
one?
it.
Okay. I have to take a moment. Back in my Mississippi days attending Ole Miss, I one time watched my fellow roommate apply mascara before she put on eyeshadow because she was like, oh, all the extra dustings of eyeshadow will work like a primer on top of my mascara so that when I do my second coat, I'll have the most amazing lashes.
Well, let me just start by saying I appreciate her creativity.
Sure.
Go on.
Happy to support it, but I also, at a very young age, was like, you done lost your mind, Marielle. And so
we love you, Marielle.
Yeah, we love you, Marielle. And so for that, I say, you've got to do eyeshadow first. I mean, here's the thing. In terms of artistry, if you're going to put on liner, the brush that you would have to then apply that would equally line up to that beautiful liner with shadow, I don't think has existed in the world today.
I love it.
So I vote shadow first.
Okay, so I would say as a general rule of thumb, I do believe shadow first. However, with that being said, Patty, I do think sometimes for me, if I'm really trying to like smoke out my shadow, sometimes I need the precise line from the liner as my shape and my boundary for my eye. Does that make sense?
I can respect the parameter.
So sometimes if I need that parameter, I need that boundary, I'm going to go ahead and do my line first. I'm going to do my shadow, and then I'm going to reline.
All right, Eve Pearl, I'm into it.
I mean, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie, but it's still not as much work as baking.
True that. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to our first ever podcast, Basic B.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thanks so much for your questions. Keep them coming. You can always send us your questions on our Facebook page. I'm Elise Ivy QVC.
Courtney Kaysen QVC. And check it out weekly because we'll ask you different questions to contribute to our podcast.
Absolutely. And be sure to follow us on Instagram as well at the same handles. And we're looking forward to connecting with you.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up. I'm Courtney Kaysen.
And I'm Elise Ivy.
And remember,